Good afternoon, everyone. Hello, thank you for coming. And so as you know, this lecture is part of our joint lecture series between Faculty of Education and the Center for Information Technology and in Education. So before we formally start, let me invite our director of our center to say a few words about our center. Okay, Dr. Gary Wong, please.
Thank you, Xiao. Hi, everyone. I hope you can hear me well. So my name is Gary Wong, and I'm the Center Director of the Center for Information Technologies in Education from the Faculty of Education. And thank you, Xiao, for inviting Dr. Ellen Zhou, Assistant Professor of Education Psychology from the Pennsylvania State Universities, and welcome you to Hong Kong U, and also welcome everyone to join these seminars co-organized between Faculty of Education and our center. And I apologize that I can't be here physically because I have another meetings to be engaged in after, right after these, introductions. So I hope I won't be too disturbing. So I choose to be here online. As you can see that the title today of the talk is Using Simulations and Language Intelligence to Support Digital Literacy Educations from Evaluations to Human-Centered Chatbot Design. And this is a very emerging topic, and I believe that all of you are going to be benefit from this talks, and I'm sure Xiao is going to do a much better introductions of Ellen than me. And so I just want to say welcome you all, and I hope you enjoyed this seminars, and we look forward to more these seminars with other international scholars and researchers, outstanding researchers like Ellen, and hopefully you can benefit from her talk. And so thank you very much, and I will pass the time back to Xiao to lead and facilitate the seminar.
Thank you, Gary. So now let me introduce our speaker. Dr. Ellen Zhou, also Wenting Zhou, is Assistant Professor of Educational Psychology in the Department of Educational Psychology, Counseling and Special Education at the Pennsylvania State University. She's also co-hired at the Penn State Institute for Computational and Data Science. Her research lies at the intersection of learning sciences, linear analytics, and instructional design with artificial intelligence. She's specialized in using advanced computational methods to understand the cognitive, social, and affective processes in different online learning contexts by analyzing large-scale education data. She also designs AI-supported personalized learning environments to address diverse learning needs. As some of you already know, that Ellen is actually graduated from our Master of Information Technology Education program. So she is, of course, an outstanding alumnus of our program. So without further ado, let's welcome Dr. Zhou.
Thank you, Dr. Hu, for the kind introduction. So I also want to recognize Dr. Hu as my committee member in my dissertation, and she gave me a lot of great inspirations, which really helped me finish my doctoral dissertation. So thank you for that. It feels like a homecoming to me. I actually just landed on Hong Kong last night, so I'm still jet lagging. But I'm so happy to be here. I was walking around the campus, and because last time I was here, that was 4 years ago, before the pandemic. So it's been a while, and I saw like new buildings going up, and even the restrooms have been renovated. So that's amazing. Yeah, so it's like Hong Kong U, this place feels very personal to me. A lot of emotional attachment here. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about simulation and language intelligence to support digital literacy education. So like Dr. Hu just mentioned, so right now I'm an assistant professor at education psychology at Penn State. I joined Penn State last July after I finished my postdoc in Cornell University. So basically, this research that I'm going to talk about today is, the research project that I was working on during my postdoc at Cornell, and then a little bit of an extension to, work something that I'm working on right now at Penn State. So some background about myself. So my research sits at the intersection at learning technologies, learning analytics, and data-driven instructional design. So my PhD was actually in learning technologies. So I did research projects here and there. I touched upon different things, but the major theme here is still using or exploring the potential of advanced technologies to enhance, to facilitate teaching and learning. So I did, in my PhD, I did series games. I helped design a 3D simulation game to teach elementary school science. And then in the meantime, I also did some projects in augmented reality, virtual reality, and adaptive learning, other learning simulations. And in my dissertation, I worked on a project using machine learning to analyze the students' discussion posts in MOOCs, in massive open online courses. So a little bit here and there, but the theme, I can boil it down into three basic themes. One is how do we use advanced technologies to facilitate teaching and learning? The second is how do we generate insights from large-scale education data? And the third theme is how to use those insights to inform the design of more learning applications to feed those insights back to enhance learning. Here's a little bit of personal, professional history, because I want to give more of a personal touch to my presentation. And like I said, I have a lot of emotional attachment to Hong Kong U. So I did my master here in the MIT program, and then I worked full-time for a year at UHK, and then I moved to the United States. I did my PhD in University of Texas at Austin. And during the time I was there, I also worked on several projects with Asian Development Bank and World Bank. And then I did my postdoc in Cornell University, and last July I joined Penn State to be assistant professor at their education psychology department. So I'm sharing this with you because I'm so grateful for all the places I've been to and the professional connections that I built, and over the years, I was able to maintain those friendship and professional ties. I was really grateful for that, and I want to recognize those collaborators and friends. So today I will talk about two studies. So the study one is something that I did in my postdoc, which is using simulation to support digital literacy education. The second is using language intelligence to support digital literacy education. And then I'll leave some time for Q&A. So let's look at the first study. So a little bit of context before we delve into the research questions. So the simulation platform that I will be talking about throughout the whole talk will be this platform called Social Media Test Drive. So this platform was built in the social media lab at Cornell University. Its target audience are adolescents, youth aged 9 to 13. So the purpose of this platform is to teach young adolescents digital literacy and citizenship knowledge and skills. And the reason why we chose this age group is that in the United States, the children are not supposed to register social media accounts until they're 14. So we want to capture this particular age group because we want to provide them training to prepare them to better, to brace them for all kinds of cyber risks that they might encounter in the social media space. And right now, we are still expanding this platform, but we built already 12 different modules that touched upon different topics in social media literacy. So for example, privacy, digital footprint, cyberbullying, fake news, advertisements, so on and so forth. And right now, we launched this platform in summer 2019. And right now we have covered over 750,000 users. And right now we have over 5,000 active users per day. So it has become a massive platform. So I want to play a short video here to give you, to give you a view of what's under the hood of this platform.
Hi, this is Daniel with the Common Sense Education. I'm excited to let you know about social media test drive. Hi, this is Daniel with the Common Sense Education. I'm excited to let you know about social media test drive, a new educational tool that is aligned with a digital citizenship curriculum. For the last few years, our team has been working with researchers from Cornell University to create a tool that promotes social media literacy. Social media test drive is that tool, and its goal is simple: to prepare middle school students with the skills they need to navigate the digital world of social media. So if you're looking for a digital citizenship activity that can be done in a synchronous or asynchronous setting, or if you're interested in helping your students learn things like how to build healthy social media habits or how to identify fake news online, then social media test drive is a tool for you. So let me show you what this tool looks like. This is a social media test drive landing page where you will be able to explore each of the 12 modules we have created. Each module is a social media environment that students can explore while learning how to overcome a digital challenge. Each module is designed to scaffold students' introduction to social media, and they're organized into 4 sections. In the Learn section, students are introduced to key digital citizenship concepts and vocabulary. Then they are taken to the test drive timeline. This first introduction to the timeline environment features pop-up boxes that teach students about things they might encounter on social media, as well as things they can do in case they experience a dreadful activity. In this case, students are learning about cyberbullying. Once students have a grasp for the basic concepts, they move on to the practice session. Here, students have more freedom. They're able to scroll through the timeline and interact with it by doing things like liking a post or writing a comment. The section includes visual aids to help students practice the skills they learned in the previous section. After navigating the timeline with some support, students are sent to the Explore or Free Play section. Here, students get to be fully immersed in a social media environment. They're given some context for what they should look out for as they explore the timeline. But whether they do something or not is up to them. At the end of the activity, students will come across a reflection section where they will have the opportunity to answer a couple of questions about their experience and share some of the things they noticed in the Explore section. Thanks very much for watching. To find more great resources for educators and schools, visit us at Common Sense Education.
Yeah, so as you have seen, it's a platform that we use, the theoretical model that we use to build this platform is the experiential learning cycle. So it was proposed by David Coe in 1984. So basically what they propose is that students need to immersed in these 4 key stages of learning in order for their in order for meaningful learning to occur. So critical experience, and then reflective observation, and then abstract conceptualization and active experimentation. So these cycles can repeat. And to put it in our context, in the context of social media test drive, so we first have students interact with the simulated social media environments. As you can see, the timeline there is basically, it's like a fake Facebook, right, or Instagram. So the students will see some social dilemmas there, for example, cyberbullying, right? And then we engage them in critical reflective observation, and then help them build their hypothesis or conceptual, a very initial conceptual conceptualization of what they have observed on the timeline. And then we give them a free play section, which they can explore or they can experiment their hypothesis. And then they go back to the reflection to kind of like summarize their learning. So in this study, well, there are a lot of questions we asked, but here I want to select maybe the most people are most interested in these two questions. Question one is, how does social media test drive affect learners' social media literacy? So basically, does it work or not, right? So compared to the learners who haven't used this platform, do the learners use this platform actually improve their social media literacy? And the second question is, how do learners' engagement patterns in social media test drive affect their social media literacy? So we want to examine what students are actually doing within the modules and see whether those engagement patterns are actually linked to the learning outcomes. So basically, in what ways they use the module or in what ways they use this platform will result in more meaningful learning outcome. Okay. So we did a randomized control study. So with 211 students in the control group and 224 students in the experiment group. So for the control group, well, for both groups, we asked students to complete a characteristic survey. So gathering some demographic information from them, gender, age, their years of using social media, how confident they are navigating social media, things like that. And then for the control group, we give students 3 weeks asking them to administer 3 content surveys, or 6 content surveys, I'm sorry. So each domain represents a topic in the social media test drive. And then for the intervention group, we asked the participants to complete 4 modules on different topics. And then immediately after that module, we administer a knowledge survey, which are the same with the control group. So basically, for the control group, they didn't do any modules, and we give them the survey. For the intervention group, we ask them to complete the module and then immediately test their knowledge, their understanding of the topics. All right, so a little bit sorry.
So last slide, you said randomly selected.
Yeah.
So what does it mean randomly selected from module 1 to 3?
Yeah, so in total, we have 6 domains or 6 topics, 6 modules, and we randomly select students to complete 4 modules. So these 4 modules were random. We just guarantee that at least they complete 4 modules because we have we run an IRT model that gave us an implication that if students can do 4 modules, we can estimate their social media literacy across 6 domains. So that was something related to the scale development here I want to talk about because we actually have less participants than we expect. So this is a way to kind of like ask them to do less modules, but still be able to estimate their overall social media literacy. Yeah, so the knowledge survey was also developed by us. This is actually the first challenge we encountered in this project because we explore the literature and we didn't see any measurement scales that are relevant to social media literacy, in particular to this age group. Most of the scales were self-rating. Self-testing how confident they are in navigating social media, but they don't have any objective measure that can actually test how much they know about what things to do, what are the acceptable, responsible behaviors on social media. So that's our first step. We spent almost a year to develop this youth social media literacy scale. So we painstakingly went through all those steps. We explore, we decompose the social media concepts, and then we develop the items, and we have experts review the items, filter the items, and then did a cognitive pre-testing with a group of kids. And then we went into a formal scale validation process with over 300 teenagers to make sure that the knowledge scale that we develop are actually accurate in capturing students' social literacy, social media literacy. And if you're interested in the scale, you can download it from our paper here. So let's look at the results. Does it work or not? So we build regression models here. We put their condition meaning whether they're in experimental group or in control group, and also some demographics variables here to predict their knowledge outcome measured by the scale that I just mentioned. So here you can see that their condition, their experiment condition actually significantly predict their learning outcome. So if they're in the experimental group, it means that their learning outcomes are better than the control group. And one other interesting finding that we found that students' subjective social media literacy knowledge also significantly predict their knowledge outcome after the module. So, which means how confident they were before they went into the module actually also predict their objective knowledge. And here we did pairwise comparison across different domains. So these were the 6 modules that we tested, and we found that there were significant effects on the module for all domains except the module shaping digital footprint. So we did a little bit of exploration in that, and we suspect that maybe there weren't enough scaffolding within this particular module to help students practice the skills that we want them to learn. And for research question 2, which is about students' engagement patterns in social media test drive and how does that affect their knowledge outcome. So we measure different behavioral variables based on the students' trace data or the log data that we harvested from the platform. So how much time they spend on each module, and within each module, how much time they spend on each section, because based on the experiential learning framework, there are different phases of learning, right? We want to measure how much time students spend in those different phases. And then we also measure their completion rates of recommended actions. So in some of the sections within a module, we recommend students to perform certain type of actions. For example, in a cyberbullying module, we encourage students to write a supporting message to the victim who are being bullied, or write a message to confront the bully, telling him that, hey, this is not okay, this is not appropriate language to use, something like that. So in each different modules, we recommend students to do something. So this is what we call recommended actions. We measure their completion rate of these actions in each module. And then we incrementally build a regression model to model their behaviors and see whether they have predictive power in students' knowledge outcomes. And there are a lot of information to unpack here, but I want to highlight 3 key takeaways here. So one is longer time spent in the modules predicts better knowledge outcome. So if you see model 1, when we put only the time spent variables into the model, it actually significantly predicts the knowledge outcome. Even though as we put more engagement variables or behavioral modules into variables into the model, you can see that the time spent effect actually fades over, when it comes to the full model here, you don't see a significant effect of the time spent here. It's because other behavioral variables are interfering with the effects of the time spent. So it's actually like overshadowing it. So, so that's why we build this incremental model, because we want to tease apart each individual behavioral variable and see whether they have an effect on the outcome. And the second takeaway is completing more recommended actions predicts better knowledge outcome. This is our major finding, I think, for this study, is that if students are actually doing the things that we recommend them to do, that can predict better learning outcome. So passively consuming those information is not enough. They have to actually walk the walk. They have to take the action, however straightforward they are. They have to actually do those things in order to retain knowledge. And as the third takeaway is the random action negatively affect the knowledge outcome. So like I mentioned in the free play section of each module, students are they're not given any guidance. They can freely explore the timeline, the simulation. There's no rules of, what things they should do or should not do. We just give them, some problematic posts with some neutral posts, and we expect them to identify those problematic posts and take some actions against it. So students can take random actions doing totally irrelevant things, right? Like liking some neutral post or, writing some irrelevant posts. If they did more of those actions, it actually negatively affect the knowledge outcome. I think it's because they're not concentrating on the things that we expect them to learn. And instead they explore other things and engage in behaviors that are not relevant to social media literacy. So that's why it's distracting them. So the instructional design implication here is that maybe we should give them less distractions, right? We should kind of like scale back on those irrelevant learning components in order to make them focus more on the things that they're supposed to learn. All right, that's the first study. Oh, okay, questions? Yeah.
So I'm thinking about the recommended action.
Yeah.
So can you explain more about what the action you recommend or the system recommend, or and how did the environment set what kind of contents can be recommended to you?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. So I'm not sure whether you guys have noticed in the video. So there's a simulation timeline, a social media simulation timeline, and there are some guidance on the side. For example, when students, when there's a cyberbullying post, the guidance on the side will say, see, this is called cyberbullying. And in this scenario, in this situation, the appropriate type of reaction is to confront the bully, right? Or write something supportive to the victim so it will feel less upset, something like that. So those are the recommended action that we design as a designer of the platform. Does that answer your question? Okay.
My question is about the random actions.
Yeah.
How did you define actions are random or not?
Oh yeah, good question. So I've just explained what recommended action is, right? If the students in the cyberbullying module, they're actually doing the things that we recommended, like supporting the victim or confronting the bully, then they hit the points, right? But if they did something different, for example, in a neutral post, like something posted like, oh, what a beautiful day. And this student replied to that post saying, I'm feeling good about the weather too, something like that. That's totally irrelevant to cyberbullying because they are kids. These kids at this age, they're curious. They haven't had a lot of chance to interact with real social media platform. So whatever they see on the simulation, they think those things were posted by real human, and they want to interact with whoever were writing those posts. So they were actually really excited about, the whole the simulation, and they want to interact with the users or the fake posts we already constructed into the simulation. So we categorize the students' actions into recommended and not recommended. Recommended actions were the actions that are related to the social media literacy. Irrelevant are just random posts, whatever you will do on a social media platform that are not showing that you are a pro-social, responsible, ethical person. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So you have the things like correct answer about how students should be performing on the platform.
Yeah. We have a list of recommended actions or good behaviors. Right, because in social media literacy, there's a lot of things you can define on, how to be a responsible, ethical, a good digital citizen, right? The things you would do besides cyberbullying, like in a fake news module, we recommend students to report those fake news. So whenever you see those, shady headlines that are signaling this is a problematic post, then we recommend students to flag and report those fake news. And also in the privacy, we give the students some scenarios like if someone posts, come to my house and provide the address, then maybe that's a way that we can show, responsible behavior, maybe reminding this poster that this is not okay because you will attract some, the wrong crowd, right? So something like that.
Thank you.
Yeah. If you want to know more about all the actions or know more about social media literacy, you can actually, I can give you the link to the platform. You can try some of our modules.
One follow-up question regarding the random action.
Yeah.
So, like you said, students may give some up or like or showing their students, or others posting something. I'm just thinking about whether this kind of action can be related to some degree of like student perceived interaction with others, with peers, and that kind of perceived interaction or social presence can affect the social presence literacy. So that part can be like a moderator between the random action and their social media literacy. Just thinking about whether it could be that helpful or necessarily.
Can you clarify, like, what do you mean by social presence actions?
Like so far, what we measure is about students' real behavior, their action, and those kind of actions can be labeled as random action.
Yeah.
And your research question to measure the relationship between the random action behavior and the social media literacy. And I'm thinking about whether students like random action are related to their perceived interaction with others because they are giving like some stuff.
Right. I see. That's what you mean. Yeah, definitely. But it depends on which domain we're talking about, right? If like I said, in the sixth module, in the 6 domains, we go back to those domains here. You can see that. So like advertisements being upstandard, that's for the cyberbullying module, and digital footprint, fake news, scam and phishing, ups and downs means media habits. So maybe what you were talking about were related to the ups and downs, or like the media habit module. So showing somebody, like somebody was feeling upset, we encourage students to give them support, give them a like, or give them encouragement, right? So it depends on which domain and social media literacy we're talking about. Definitely, students' random behavior in one module may be indicative of some sort of social media literacy knowledge in another domain. That's definitely possible, but we didn't measure that within a particular domain, right? So for the like the fake news module, we didn't measure students' pro-social behavior. We only measure their literacy of identifying fake news. Does that make sense? Okay. Great question, by the way.
Sorry, I want to ask that it is not a must for these learners to react to the posts, like clicking the likes or reporting something, because it is an experimental environment.
Right.
Students may know that you want me to react to it, but what if some students are just standby?
Yeah, that's a great question. We actually also pay attention to the bystanders there. Because in the cyberbullying module, we expect students to actually do something, right? Pro-social, demonstrating pro-social behaviors. But there were a lot of students who were just, bystanders who didn't do anything. So that's related to my next study. We are designing a chatbot to nudge students to produce those actions. So I'll circle back to your question later. Good question. All right, so this is the second question, second study, which is using language intelligence to support digital literacy education. By language intelligence is a broad concept, but here I'm just talking about chatbot. So this, because chatbot is our focus for this project. So again, the same platform, because we observed that some students, even though they saw those guidelines, those instructions, they still didn't do anything. right? So how do we scaffold that? How do we nudge students to, because our finding, or if they actually produce the action, then that predicts their better knowledge outcome, right? So the reasonable next step is to nudge students to produce action, right? Versus only passively consuming all the instructions within those modules. So the challenge here is that because we have more than 750,000 users right now, it's actually growing beyond our expectation. We received a very small grant for this project, but now it exploded. So it's a happy burden, to be honest. And right now we need to, apply for more grants to support all the maintenance and the instructional support for our learners. So we have so many users, and it's really difficult to provide them with personal feedback. And AI provide the best solution because it can automate the instructional the feedback to the students, right? So the goal here is to use AI to design a conversational agent to provide personal and dynamic feedback. So I will unpack what we mean by personal and dynamic feedback. So let's delve into one particular module within the platform, which is the cyberbullying module. So let's look at a post here. So this is a post that we provide in the simulation. So this person called Keegan Scott was, writing something mean about his classmate, right? So, oh my God, look at Dylan's sketchbook. He's such a nerd. So this is microaggression. I would call it microaggression, right? But still, it is bullying, right? It is bullying someone. And there were some other users. These are fake users, by the way. So they said some follow-up things. And in the scenario of this post, we want the students to be able to recognize this as a problematic post. And then we expect them to do the right thing against it. So from our log data, we capture some very interesting responses from the students, from very pro-social to very toxic. So a very pro-social meaning that the students may write something like, Dylan, your drawing looks awesome. So Dylan is the victim here, right? Someone who's being bullied. And then just ignore them, bully. So these were all supporting the victims, right? And something more neutral, like I like drawing too. So this is something we call irrelevant or non-recommended action, right? Because this is not addressing the cyberbullying situation. And then here, very interesting, we didn't expect this. So some students, they recognize, they can identify that this is a cyberbullying situation, and they also want to support the victim and want to, criticize the bully, but they use very inappropriate language, right? So these are problematic language if you are standing up for someone and you want to confront somebody. So we recognize these as teachable moments, right? So this is a moment that an instructor should come in, should intervene, right? When we saw students write something like this, we should nudge them. We should give them a reminder to, redirect them back on the track. So this is what we hope our chatbot can do, right? So this is sort of like a plan for our, that's called participatory design with target users. So because we're using AI technology to design this chatbot, and as we all know that AI these days, especially large language models, are really, really hard to predict. It's hard to change, right? You cannot expect what they will produce. So in that case, we want to, in order to make this chatbot more relevant and also effective and responsible, we want to co-design with our target users to make sure that whatever the chatbot set to the learners are actually educational and are actually appropriate, right? Using the appropriate level of knowledge. So in the first phase, we interviewed the youth and educators to identify the users' needs and prototype with NLP models. And in the second phase, we want to actually develop and deploy this chatbot into the simulation and conduct usability study. And in the third phase, we want to conduct another randomized control to test whether students use a module with a chatbot are actually outperforming students who are not who have not had a chance to interact with the chatbot. Okay, so how do we translate human insights into algorithm design? Because we want to invite our target users into the design process. So how do we do that? How do we translate their insights into our system design? I want to separate them into two stages. I want to explain them one by one. So the first stage is understand the natural language. So explore the learner's needs and identify the teachable moments and extract some design guidelines. We want to know students what they would do, for example, in a cyberbullying situation or in any other cyber risk situation. And we use machine learning to build a text classifier to identify the teachable moment. So for example, in the student post that I just showed you, we can see a lot of teachable moment there, right? When students are doing the correct behavior, then we want to encourage them. This is positive reinforcement, right? If they're doing the opposite thing, we want to give them negative reinforcement. And if they want, if their intention is good, but they use inappropriate language, then we want to give them a different kind of instruction, right? So we want to use machine learning to build a classifier to identify all those teachable moments. We have just finished the first phase. We interviewed nine educators and 10 teenagers. And then, as you can see here, we use the empathy map here to map out their responses. So what we ask them open-ended questions like in bullying situations, what would you do? How do you feel? And what actions did you take? And what is your logic? What is your thought behind those actions? Right. So I want to highlight here. So the thoughts they had about cyberbullying. So some kids said kids don't want to report the bully to the teacher because they don't want to be snitches. But this is something new, right? They don't want to be labeled as, the teacher's pet or somebody, right? Because that will make them unpopular among their peers. And the second thought here is I think that the adults should model how to deal with these things because kids look up to them. So this idea is more common among younger kids because they trust the adults more. They look up to whatever, the mentor, the teacher, and the parents are doing. So based on these insights, we derive some design guidelines. So for example, whatever the chatbot said should address the learner's feelings, right? If this learner is feeling upset, how do you respond to that? Simulate the role of a supportive peer. So in the developmental age where kids are easily influenced by their peers, maybe the chatbot can play the role as an older peer or something like a friendly tone, but speak the language at a level of the kid, so they feel they can feel kind of a sense of belonging, right? This chatbot is actually at our age and is talking in the language that we're using. So give them a sense of relevance and highlight the benefits of being an upstander, consequence of being a bystander, because younger kids, they actually don't understand these things, right? They don't understand if you don't step up for the victim, then maybe the bully will post more mean comments, right? They don't understand the logic behind actually doing something to stop cyberbullying. And we use reflective linguistics cues to trigger critical reasoning. So maybe ask them questions, right? If the kid said something using inappropriate language, maybe the chatbot should, ask them to reflect on their language. What you're doing is really supportive, but do you pay attention to your language? Are you using the right kind of language? So from the kids, they find out if they will ask questions, then maybe it's easier for them to trigger their reflection, right? So all these things, we derive all these design guidelines from our interviews. Okay, So in the second stage, we invite the kids to draft constructive responses to shape pro-social behavior. So what we call ideal AI responses, right? We also want to include our target users' voice into, creating those AI outputs. So using human-generated responses to fine-tune the language generation model. So how many of you have used ChatGPT? I think by this point, everybody actually, unless you're living under the rock. Yeah, so it's hard to take these large language model because the training data behind these models were humongous, right? You can't really predict what the AI would say to every individual. So to be able to make it more controllable, or to make it like safer for the kids, because the parents are actually very concerned about what AI would say to their children. And as educators, we also not only that we want the kids to have more interactive experience, we also want the kids to receive something meaningful. Like the AI response should be both instructional and engaging and interesting, right? So in order to do that, we want to use our human-generated responses to fine-tune the language generation model. So how we do this is that we ask the kids to draft the ideal responses under different type of scenarios. And we use this question and answer pairs as training data to train the GPT model. The thing that we found was that we actually don't need a lot of training data for the AI to output, the relevant type of response. It's really amazing because the models can pick up very quickly from the language hints that we feed the models. So this is really interesting. And I wanted to show you what we actually mean by the ideal responses. So this is what we found from our prototyping with the children. So we use Whistlebot design. So we use GPT-3 NLG models. GPT-3 was before ChatGPT. ChatGPT is GPT 3.5, right? So this is the version before that. So if we only use off-the-shelf GPT-3, if we didn't do any fine-tuning, any training, then what it will produce will be like this. So in scenario 1, so when the learner actually says something to support the victim, the AI would say, "Thank you, I'm glad you like it." It feels like linguistically it's relevant, right? But instructionally, it's meaningless, right? And in the second scenario, it's the same. So the learner said, "Hoping bullies get called by the teacher." So it's actually a good behavior, right? But in this case, the GPT-3 will say, "I hope so too, have a great day." So why is it meaningful to the learners? And in the third scenario, I'm sorry if it offended you, please let me know how I can help you. This is really inconsistent, right? So this is problematic. So after we use the human-generated responses to fine-tune the model, we found something really amazing. So when the learners are supporting the victim, the human-enhanced AI will say, "Yes, I agree. Dylan is lucky to have you as a friend." So this is the positive reinforcement, right? It's recognizing the learner's behavior and praising them, or encourage them to produce more similar actions. And in scenario 2, when the learner confronts the bully, which is also a good behavior, right? And the human enhancing, I would say, "I hope so too. Thank you for supporting Dylan. You did the right thing." So this is something the teacher would say, right? So this is actually the ideal type of response that we're looking for. And in scenario 3 here, when the kids are bullying the bully, with good intention, but bad language, the AI would say, "Dude, that's rude. Watch your language, please. Not cool to bully others." So this is perfect, right? This is exactly what we're looking for. And we also wanted to fine-tune the tone that we use to that the AI used to deliver these responses, because when you see something like this, it looks like it's from the teacher, right? It's from a mentor, it's from an adult. But some kids from our interview, we found out that the kids, they actually don't like adults involving in their social media space. So maybe we should produce more AI outputs that are actually using the tones of children. Maybe that will make them feel more relevant. So all these parameters we can tweak, based on our interviews, the insights from our targeted users. And in the third phase, we need to decide thresholds for AI intervention and design interface for human control. So this is something more advanced, something that we haven't had a chance to engage in, but this is definitely a future direction because we want to give the teachers or the users more control, right? For example, if the kids, they don't like having adults in their social media space, maybe they can choose, right? Maybe we can give them a button that they can click and choose, I want this, I want, what type of people in my social media timeline. And also, when the AI is delivering something really irrelevant, we also want to design, some type of mechanism so that the teacher can intervene, right? So maybe because the teacher, they don't know the algorithms, but we can give them like a button or some other type of, we're still brainstorming this, what kind of human control we can give the instructors to, put a stop when the AI is behaving in a meaningless way, something like that. So again, using human insights to tweak the conversational agent system iteratively. So this is definitely an iterative process. We will repeatedly engage with the kids. We will invite them into the loop of design and incrementally improve the whole system. Okay, so that wraps up that takes more time than I expected, but this is it's really good to share these two studies with you, and I look forward to hearing more insights or any questions that you have. Right.
I'm just curious about what things but I thought you the chat view and find some uncertainty remarks.
Right.
So what do you think? What's the position of the chatbot? Is it like an inspector, or is it like a friend to the student, or is it like instructor to the student?
Right, that's a great question. This is one of the parameters we want to experiment with the chatbot design, right? So like you said, the tone that the chatbot used to deliver the message to the students, whether we should have the chatbot play a role as a teacher or as an adult mentor or as an older peer or as a younger peer. So all these things we can play with, right? And right now, I can't give you a definite answer which one will be more effective. It really depends on the kid's preference and their age and the topics that we're talking about here. So that's why in the last stage, we want to give we want to build some sort of mechanism so that human can control what they want to see, right? Who they want to, what type of chatbot they want to interact with, that they will feel, the conversational process will be more fun or engaging or, educational. So this is something we will experiment with.
I also share this feeling that I saw in the second last slide. The AI provided AI provided three different suggestions.
Yeah.
In the first one, I would see as a tutor, and second one as a teacher, third one as a peer.
Yeah.
So basically, if I'm the user using this platform, I receive these three suggestions, I would feel confused
Right.
who this AI is,
Okay.
as a teacher, friend, or someone else. So yeah, I agree that you need to identify this AI as a particular role it is playing when it is trying to help students. Yeah. Because I also developed a chatbot system.
Right.
which is designed to help students build arguments and improve their argumentative writing skills. And on this platform, students first interact with the chatbot. The chatbot asks prompting questions to help students create essential argument elements like what's your claim, what's your reason, do you have any evidence?
Right.
And when students they do not have ideas to support their position, the chatbot can provide idea suggestions like you may think this idea is helpful for supporting your position. And also the chatbot can remind students of some opposing ideas. Just in constructing arguments, you need to consider counter arguments and write rebuttals to make your own argument more stronger.
Right.
When I'm designing the system, my supervisor gave a suggestion because I use a female adult as the profile picture of the chatbot. So when students interact with the chatbot, they will see that, okay, this is a teacher or tutor. But what if we use a like student profile picture, but at their same age, they will consider the chatbot as a learning partner. So they will have different feelings, different emotions towards the chatbot. Yeah,
that's a brilliant idea.
Yeah.
I mean, we're also, like I said, I'm also experimenting with different roles. Should we have a consistent role like throughout the whole page, or do we have the AI simulate different roles? Right? We can have like under this post, we can have 3 AIs, right? We can have 3 chatbots. We give them different profiles, right? So that can be, that can be do very easily. Can be done very, very easily. But will that confuse the students, or will the students feel this is a more interesting interaction if I have the chance to, if I can be exposed to more, people from different groups, right? Or, some kids, they just like having a peer, older kids in particular, they don't like having adult mentors. But I think in your argumentative writing situation, the students might prefer like mentor role, right? Because that, demonstrates more authority or credibility. Yeah, but in this role, it's more like peer interaction, because like when you look at TikTok or Instagrams, whatever social media that the kids are playing with these days, they would have different accounts, right? One account for, where they can have parents, and the other account, a private account, which is only accessible by his peers. So they present a different social identity on social media. So I think that's the learning context a little bit from yours. For yours is a very targeted instructional situation, right? When we expect a more knowledgeable, more more credible tutor who's teaching us, something that I don't know.
Actually, I named my chatbot system as Argumate. It's a combination of argument and mate. I consider it as a learning partner for students to interact with in building strong arguments. So I perceive it as a learning partner, a peer.
Right. Yeah. So you assume that if students are, you having like a co-pilot type of role, it will actually be more effective than a tutor role. Okay. Yeah,
my assumption.
Yeah, we can test that. Yeah.
So we have some questions online, so I will read more questions from Nicole Pan. Pro-social behavior online, for example, calling out someone's bad behaviors may not be safe to do in real life situation. So do you teach students the differences between online and real life bullying and the appropriate and also safe social responses in different contexts?
Oh, that's a very profound question. I think it's very ambitious to do that within this platform, because we do have, there are some different parameters or different factors at play when we're talking about in-person bullying and online bullying. Because in online bullying situation, people can be anonymous. Right, they can hide behind their profile and people won't know their true identity, and that is why it's especially risky, because people don't know who they are, so they might post more more aggressive comments. I don't think in this platform we can have, of course, it's easy to do. Logistically, it's easy to do. We can just, have a chatbot, loaded with very long-winded responses. But will that be effective? Will that be authentic? I don't know. But we do we did thought about some response we can give to students when they are confronting a bully. So if they are afraid of retaliation, or some people might bully them back, they can provide some more like subtle form of support to the victim. For example, they can simply report the bully's action, and the report will not show their name or their profile. Something like that, a more subtle way to demonstrate their pro-social behavior versus explicitly calling out the bully. So that's one of the solutions that we thought about.
There's another question, and thank you. From Uziel Ahmed, what are the best practices for evaluating the effectiveness of simulation and language intelligence technologies in digital literacy education?
The best approach is to evaluate the effectiveness. Yeah, that's a good question. So in this project, what we're thinking about now is from a very educational psychology perspective, we want to do a randomized control to see whether students who are exposed to the chatbot actually produce better learning outcome compared to the control group who didn't learn with the chatbot. In terms of the measure itself, well, we can definitely test their knowledge outcome, their self-efficacy. But in social media literacy context, what we care most about are students' behavior, their actual behaviors after they learn with this platform, right? Because having the knowledge doesn't mean you will actually do it in reality. So in our next eval, actually we have just completed this. We want to see whether the students' knowledge can actually translate to behaviors. So what we designed was an experiment. Again, we have the control and experimental group. We test their knowledge outcomes immediately after they completed the module. And 2 weeks after that, we gave students another what we call behavioral test. So we give them another simulation with problematic posts. So for example, we give them 30 posts in the same page. Some posts might touch upon cyberbullying content. Some posts may have, some fake information, something like that. So it's like mixing a variety of problematic posts. And then we ask the students to identify and react to those posts. So right now we're still analyzing the data. I don't have the results yet, but this is another way to test whether actually their actions will follow after they learn with the module. Yeah, and the other part of the question is the AI effectiveness. I think that's outside the scope of education psychology. But like in this project, I'm also working with a team of AI scholars and human-computer interaction experts. And from their perspective, they have their own set of criteria to evaluate the effectiveness of the chatbot. So for example, from HCI's perspective, they might ask questions like whether the responses are relevant to the question or to the comments, or whether there are grammatical mistakes in their responses, and whether the responses are consistent, something like that. So they have a different set of criteria to evaluate the quality of the chatbot outputs, something like that. And from computer science perspective, I think their criteria might be, how effective or how accurately the chatbot can analyze the learner's input. But like I said, in these 3 scenarios, did the AI actually understand what the kids are saying and correctly put them into the right type of category, right? Can the AI categorize this comment as, a bullies, like this label or this group, right? So how accurate it is, and whether the generation process is quick enough or relevant enough, like something like that. So we have different sets of tests or scales to measure how effective the chatbot is.
Can students respond to the chatbot?
Oh, of course, it's a conversational process. You can do like endless conversation with the AI. This is another parameter we want to control. We want to see how long the conversation should be before it becomes distracting. This is another parameter. So it's really difficult to, tap into different perspectives, different dimensions of chatbot design. Is very open-ended and complex.
So for now, the chatbot identifies students' problem in the replies or something, and the chatbot start the conversation with the student, like give such suggestions, and the student can respond to the suggestions, and they do conversation.
Yeah.
A question here. Thank you. Maybe you have responded a little more, but I want to learn more about your thoughts. I just have a simple view at your modules on the social media job, and I see the news in social media. I think that sometimes it's not just a sensational fake news can be discerned. Sometimes some hidden misinformation can be discerned through this kind of models. Because for example, deepfake in the political news, when people fake the
celebrities
video contents, it's hard to decide. So making an interaction with the social media could be a instinct decision after, especially after the children learn about the models. They just know what's the signs of the misinformation or fake news. So they will make the correct choice. But in real life scenarios, they may not be able to listen that, and they may not be able to perform this kind of task of evaluate information. So how to address this problem? Do you have some suggestions?
Yeah, I think you touch upon different layers. So of course, the fake news itself is evolving based on the advance of the technology, right? Previously, we only have sensational titles. Right now, we have deepfakes. And how do we do that? Even in the computer science community, it is really difficult to, build up some sort of applications or mechanisms to detect deepfakes. The algorithms are very complex and not always accurate. So even in computer science, it is a challenge at this stage, how to detect, the deepfakes. And of course, I am positive that maybe in the next 6 months, there will be a website or a tool that can be, publicly accessed by, lay audience. They can just provide the link, or they can upload they can provide the link of the video, or just upload the image to the tool. Then it can analyze and see if there are some patterns that are showing that this is created by deepfake. But we will rely on those tools to be able to teach the literacy. But right now we don't have the tools yet, so it is challenging. But for the modules that we have in social media test drive right now. So it's very, surface type of screening or filtering, right? Like if the title is sensational, if the image that are associated with that news was sensational, if there's no credible source that are given by the news, then maybe we should question the validity and the authenticity of that news. So something like that. But we are constantly upgrading the platform and trying to accommodate more complex topics, especially relating to generative AI these days. Yeah, that's definitely a future direction.
And also you mentioned that turning the knowledge into practice could be somewhat uncertain. And also for students finishing a task, they may feel that experimental circumstance.
Yeah.
I know what is right and what is wrong, but in real life, they just may use another kind of logic to
Right.
perform their action.
Yeah.
So how to address this problem?
Yeah, so that's definitely something the chatbot should at least mention, right? So in a cyberbullying scenario, there's a very interesting phenomenon. So when the students see other people are doing the right thing, he doesn't feel the need to do so because other people are taking the responsibility, so they become lazy, right? So these type of like very nuanced type of logic, how the AI can address that. Right? Can the AI actually nudge the students to create the behavior, even though other people are already doing the same thing? So that was actually a study that we're doing in social media lab, right? It's also outside the scope of education psychology. It's in communication. So in communication research, they look at how people are interacting with each other on social media and what type of mechanism that we can add to the platform so that the audiences, the community can actually be a more, foster a more healthy and responsible culture within that social media community. So they have some very interesting finding out. I can throw you some paper if you're interested in that. Okay.
Last question. I'm very interested in the human enhanced AI.
Yeah.
I suppose it's kind of hybrid intelligence.
Hybrid intelligence. I haven't heard about that term, but that's really interesting.
Hybrid intelligence is that a combination of human intelligence and machine intelligence, or artificial intelligence. Yeah, I was wondering, how do you define the interaction of human and AR in your system, and do you have any interaction patterns or some models to design this part?
Do you mean that how do we create these human enhanced AI output? Yeah, like I said, so we use the question and Q&A pairs as training data to fine tune the model. So all the question answer pairs are generated by the users. So for example, in this, when the user says this, what should the AI say? So this ideal response will also created by the users, by the teenagers. So they will give us some type of like, what would you expect to see? What advice would you take? Like what would be an effective instruction under this type of circumstance? So things like that. So we use those Q&A pairs to fine tune the model.
How many pairs do you use for training the model? Is that not very large?
Not very large. I think you can just experiment with 20.
Just 20 pairs.
And more than 20 for this project, but I don't remember how many, but really you don't need a lot. You can experiment. You don't really need. And right now we have GPT-4, right? I'm not sure whether it's open for experiment yet, but you can see because it's becoming more intelligent. So you can actually pick up the very small hints. So for example, in this context, the AI can quickly pick up that Dylan is the victim and Keegan is this bully. And within the outputs that the AI produce, he can address that. The AI can address that. So that's really amazing.
It depends on the capability of the AI in learning from human, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I want to build on this previous question.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of the biggest advancement from ChatGPT 3 to from GPT-3 to ChatGPT is the human feedback involved in the technology, right? So this in this specific system, we can like advice from the peers from this specific will, but in the OpenAI experiments with ChatGPT now, it's we all involved with this experimentation that's like hybrid intelligence, like you mentioned. So
the users
the future trend for the GPT model to iteration.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's right now it's more like users are collectively shaping the ChatGPT. Right?
Maybe one more last question.
One more question.
We can
I'm going to about the pairs.
Yeah.
The users or students or teachers only provided like the good answers or also like bad answers. So
Bad answer, yeah, we didn't use bad answers, but that's an interesting point. So, can we actually provide some examples of irrelevant or, meaning like, non-meaningful answers? I'm not sure, but right now we only use the, ideal pairs of Q&As to feed into the training data of the model. And it works like magic. It's really good, yeah.
I know I said the last one, but this is from Nancy, so please.
Thanks very much for a very interesting and quite exciting project. And I'm just wondering whether there could be, in terms of the experimentation of intervention, whether you can put in some social elements into it. Say, for example, what if there is not just a child interacting with the chatbot, but actually, say, a couple of sort of friends, trying. It's more like a game, but they were sort of interacting with the chatbots, and the chatbot can also be more than one, and then they can be commenting on the situation. So, say, for example, there is this situation, what would you do? The real kids can be chatting, but then they also have the chatbots. So yeah, so that has a kind of like a collaborative learning type of context. So that's one. And then another context I thought about is maybe you could also have the child serving as a tutor. So okay, so of course, it's similar to say when it's more like an examination situation. So now you have the which kind of response you give. But if it is more like, okay, this one doesn't know anything. Okay. So if this happens, how would you to teach the child? So rather than saying, what you should do, or what you would do if you're in this situation, but teaching the chatbot in a way.
Oh, okay. It's like more of learning by teaching approach.
So there's more a kind of like an agency. Less of a kind of being more passive.
I think that's a very, very good point. Yeah, definitely. I saw some studies using kids as tutors, teaching the chatbot how to write arguments, how to write good arguments. I think that's definitely like a very good it builds students metacognition and what are the essential elements to build a convincing argument. So the kids will need to review or they need to know all those very important components that makes a good argument to be able to teach an AI. And they feel a sense of agency and sense of accomplishment when they actually can teach the AI to do it, right? I think that's definitely a very good direction that we're exploring. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm aware of the time and let's thank our speaker once again. Very much. So we'll announce the official end of this event. But for people who are here, feel free to chat with Dr. Zhou in the next minutes. So we welcome everybody to come back for our future events by CITE and our faculty. And thank you everyone, both here and online. Thank you. Thank you.